Welcome to Blue Talks.
Well, if we want to have the perfect illustration for what it means to have a purpose-filled life, the ant is the perfect illustration. They're resilient, they're disciplined, they're relentless. They understand that they each have a role. Some have a role of gathering food and resources. Some build, some protect, some take care of the young. But they each work according to their own purpose. They don't let distractions or obstacles get in their way. They simply follow their purpose. So, what is purpose? Purpose is the foundation that allows us to shape our life and what it could be. Okay, obviously it helps us in making the decisions necessary to plan our life. It gives us boundaries, it keeps us focused, and it allows us to maximize our potential. So, with this in mind, when we want to design our life, we want to design our life with purpose, for purpose, not pleasure. You get the pleasure when you fulfill your purpose. The idea here is to build your life and build your purpose based on values and people, not on position, possessions, or power, right? I mean, listen, at the end of life, none of that matters. Who asks to see their toys and trophies on their deathbed? We don't, right? So the key really to understanding our purpose, and this really is the essence of the entire message, it's to understand, contrary to our culture, that life isn't about you, okay? Everything for living and success, every principle hinges on the understanding of this concept of purpose, that it's not about you, you see? And so, when we look, let's go here. Living with purpose is the difference between living and existing, all right? And so when we look at each other, we realize that our purpose in our life, your purpose in life, is far greater than your own achievements or your own pleasure. It goes way beyond that. It has more to do with what you can do for others, okay? When you focus on other people, what happens is you have a far more fulfilling and rewarding life. You know, and because that's where the difference comes from. I mean, think about, suppose you're like a super athlete. You're a superstar athlete and you go on to college and you win the college MVP. It feels great, right? You knew what it takes, you knew all the hard work, and it does. But now suppose you take your son or daughter and you train them and you coach them, right? And they become a superstar athlete and they go to college and they win the MVP. Which MVP feels better? Which one do you get the greater joy from? Of course, you see. Now, nothing in nature exists solely for itself. Okay, trees don't produce fruit for themselves. Rivers don't drink their own water. The sun doesn't provide heat for itself, right? You know, flowers don't provide a fragrance for themselves, right? They don't. They take all they have, all they possess, right, in order to be able to provide and do something for others. And therein lies the secret of life. Therein lies the secret of the most meaningful, rewarding life you can have, by contributing, to others. When we look at our knowledge, talent, skills, gifts, and abilities, they're not for us. They are tools for us to utilize in impacting other people. See? So that's the idea, okay? So next, and by the way, this is why each of us needs all of us, and all of us needs each of us. Because think about it. We all have different talent, gifts, skills, and abilities. We all have different backgrounds and experiences. So that means what? It means we all have something to contribute. We all have a perspective that nobody else has. And so this is real vital for us, all right? So let's take a look at some questions here that can help us move in this direction, all right? So you can just take a picture of these questions here, and you can see, but it's just simply, how can we serve mankind? If our purpose is to contribute for others, we exist for others, right? Then how can I serve mankind? What is there is good that I can celebrate and protect? what's missing that with me, with my talent, skills, gifts, and abilities can contribute? What harmful things are out there that I can oppose or resist? And then what is broken that I can restore? See, these are the ideas. If we can focus on this, this will help us into moving in that direction of thinking and working for others, okay? So the second aspect that we want to look at here is more than just what you do, but who you are. Who you are is far more important than what you do or where you do it. Because who we are, aligns with our identity. I've been associated with Prison Fellowship for many years, 45 years. And Prison Fellowship is an organization that basically helps prisoners getting out of prison to be able to stay out of prison. And they try to lower the recidivism rate. Now, apart from Prison Fellowship, the recidivism rate is 80% of the people getting out of prison are back in prison within 10 years. I mean, it's 40%, are back in prison within 1 year. And so Prison Fellowship's goal is to cut that down, and they have been masterfully successful at doing so. But how did they do it? They did it because they helped the people coming out to understand their identity, to understand who they are. You see, in other words, they changed their identity. They gave them a new identity, a new mental identity, a new spiritual identity. And as a result of this, they're not coming out saying, I'm an ex-con. They're coming out and now they're saying, I'm a restored person. I have value. I have something to contribute. And when they can come out realizing that this is who they are instead of an ex-con, the recidivism rate drops. I mean, Prison Fellowship's rate is like 14 to 15%. In the state of Minnesota, the recidivism rate for the PF people, is 0.8% versus the state's 40%. So when we can change our identity, when we can understand who we are, it makes all the difference in the world. So the real question that we want to ask, the key question, is not what shall we do, but who shall we be? See? And this all comes down to a format that I call be, do, have, help. Because who you are will determine what you do. If you're a musician, what do you do? If you're an electrician, what do you do? If you're an architect, what do you do? See, it's not what you do determines who you are. It's who you are will determine what you do. Because if you don't, you can be doing things, and if you do things that aren't in accordance, don't line up with who you are, it's going to be difficult, and you're not going to enjoy it, and you're not going to be as successful at it. But when you do things according to who you are, they line up, then your purpose, falls in line as well. And so who you are, okay, will determine what you do, okay? What you do will determine what you have. If you do a little, you get a little. If you do a lot, you get a lot. If you do impact a little, you get a little, see, and so forth. And then what you have determines who you help. And then who you help determines your influence, determines your impact, see? And so be careful of who you become while in pursuit of what you want. See, that's the key. Why? Because there's so many distractions out there. This is why we have to be relentless. This is why we can't let obstacles and distractions get in our way. We want to stay focused on what we want to do here. So let's take a look at some questions that can help us better understand a little bit more of who we are, what's important, what drives us. So the questions, and by the way, you can stop the video, take a picture of this, okay, and then you can move forward. But I mean, so obviously the first question that you want to ask yourself is, who do I want to be? I mean, do I want to be rich? Do I want to be a good friend? Do I want to be a good parent? Do I want to be a super athlete? Do I want to be a musician? Who do I want to be? And then, what is your single greatest strength? What is it that you do better than anything else that you do? Now, it doesn't mean that you're stronger than anybody else, but what is your personal single greatest strength? Because that's a part of your gifts. That's a part of your talent and abilities that you want to utilize so that you can fulfill your purpose. What drives your life? Is it anger? Is it materialism? Is it approval? We strive for approval, or is it our purpose? See, if my purpose drives me, then I'm going to be more focused, right? And so you can go, now, what do you live for? We go through and see what we can do. Think about this. If you could give a talk to adults, a 15-minute talk to adults around the world, what topic would you pick? And why would you pick it? Why is that important to you? Why does that inspire you? See, think about that. How about finish this statement. If I could, I would. If I had unlimited resources, time, money, power, resources, if I could, what would I do? See, that gives you a direction of what's important and valuable to you that you want to be able to communicate. It's a part of your contribution to mankind. That's how that works. See? And so now let's look at our ultimate purpose, okay? And it's very interesting because when we first of all, let's just say these questions, take the answers to these questions, okay? Take the answers to the questions that you just saw and you've answered, and put those on your dream board or someplace where you can see them and review them, because they will help you to stay focused. They'll help you to realize what you spend your time, money, and energy doing, okay? But what I want to do now, I want to share a little bit about the purpose of essence. In other words, our meaning in life, okay? And this is something that's often left out of different messages, and it's very interesting. Dr. Hugh Moorhead, he's a philosophy professor at the Northeastern Illinois University. He sent out a note to 250 of some of the best known philosophers, scientists, writers, intellects, asking them, what is the meaning to life? And it's very interesting because in his response, he said a lot of them came back to him and they said, well, we just make it up, And interestingly, some of them were honest enough to say, well, to be honest with you, we ain't got a clue. And then there was another group of people, they said, listen, if you find out, let us know, right? And so what does this mean? So many people, they don't understand the meaning of life. If they understand, the purpose of what we need to do, if they understand the idea of the purpose of what we need to be, right? That's one thing. But what about the meaning of life? You see, when we look at our lives and we realize that the reality is we were designed to contribute to the world, okay? In other words, take everything we have, all that we are, and utilize it for the benefit of other people. I mean, this is so vital, right? Now, that doesn't mean that we look down on ourselves. It doesn't mean that, you don't pursue success or pursue excellence. To the contrary. In fact, what you want to maximize all of your talents, skills, gifts, and abilities. Why do you want to do that? So that you can make a greater impact for your generation, right? See, listen, the goal is not success. And my 250,000 people that I've developed around the world, I make sure they understand that. I tell them, listen, if success is your goal, change it. See, the goal is not success. The goal is influence. The goal is to make an impact. You see, listen, you can accumulate, all kinds of positions and possessions and fame and fortune. Right? But the problem is, listen, we've seen it all many times. It can disappear overnight, right? But when you make an influence or you impact somebody's life, it doesn't disappear and it lasts forever. You see, so that's this idea here. And that's what we want to do. We want to make an impact. And that ties into our meaning. So if we see that and we realize then, okay, how does this fit into the meaning of life? I know what to do, I know how I need to be, but how does it fit into life's overall purpose? Well, there's 5 questions that can help us narrow and zero down on the meaning of life. So let's take a look. The first one is, who is God? Now listen, I know that's personal, okay? And it should be, right? Because, see, our God is who we live for. Our God is who or what, demands our devotion, right? And listen, of course, God can be our faith, But listen, in the world today, we know a lot, right? We know that God can be our jobs. God can be our families. God can be my hobbies. God can be many things, right? And so, but the idea here is, our understanding of who God is what creates our values and how we operate. Okay, it affects everything. Okay, it affects everything. And in fact, it was interesting. A.W. Tozer says, what comes to mind when we think about God is the most important thing about us. Now think about that. What comes to mind when we think about God is one of the most important things about us, right? Because it determines our values and tells us how we're going to operate, okay? Now listen, I know some people say, I don't believe in God. Well, that's true. There's a lot of people who don't believe in God. But it still establishes your values and affects everything you do. Because when you say, I don't believe in God, then what's that leave left? It leaves the fact that you're God. You're your own God. Because you determine what is true. You determine what is right and wrong. You determine what your purpose is. You see? And so that's where that kind of comes into play. So, at this phase in your life, who do you perceive God to be? It has a major impact on understanding your meaning. The next is, who am I? It's my identity. It's tied to my identity. Am I a protoplasmic blob that's developed into a highly intelligent form, or am I the creation of God? Now listen, if I'm just an evolved form of non-intelligent matter, there is no purpose. Because there's no standards, there's nothing to base it on, right? But if I'm the creation of God, then I have an inherent purpose. And as any created thing, if I'm going to understand my purpose is determined by my Creator, right? And the thing is many times people say, well, listen, I can kind of come up with my own purpose. Yeah, but if you didn't create yourself, how can you determine what you were created for? That's up to the one who created us, see? And so when we understand who I am, that will determine how I act and how I do things. Next, why am I here? What does that mean to me being here? Is it to eat, drink, and be merry and die? Right? No. Or is it to develop your purpose, passion, and potential? See, there's the key. What is your dream? What is your vision? The Great Commandment says what? Love God and love others, right? Makes it pretty simple, right? Just very simple. Love God, love others, everything else is going to fall into place. There's also an ancient saying that says you want to be the leader of all, be the servant of all. Falls into our idea, but it's not about you, right? Be the servant of all. Here's what I've learned. He who serves the many earns the money and a reputation. You see? And so this is this idea. And this is why we want to be able to realize that it's not about us, it's about how I can serve others. We were designed to serve and contribute to our world, okay? So the question is, what difference do you want to make with your life? What difference do you want to make every day? What a question to ask. I wake up every day and I ask myself, okay, who am I going to have the opportunity to make a difference for today? Who can I make feel better today? Who can I encourage today? See, when I go through these things. Now, the next one, controversial little subject here, right? What is right and wrong? Okay, objective morality, okay, basically moral truths that are independent of public opinion. All right, human opinion, okay? It's a process of a standard of right and wrong. It keeps humans accountable, and it gives us a guide for right living. All right, so that's what it is. But if without objective morality, it's only a basis then of human opinion and societal consensus. But that's only going to lead to chaos, because there's then no standard, and there's as many opinions and ideas as there are people. So that's where you can get your chaos, right? So the idea is that when we realize that our morality then, how we determine right or wrong is going to determine how we live out our life. How are we going to live out our life? How are we going to utilize our talents, skills, gifts, and abilities? Morality is going to have a major part in that. And then the last one here is, what is your destiny? Where am I going? How long do you want the difference you make in people's lives? How long do you want that influence and impact to last? Okay, what's your legacy going to be? What are they going to remember when you're gone, right? See, real destiny is not in what you accomplish, okay, but it's who you impact. See, that's the difference. We don't want to measure our final destiny. We don't want to measure the fulfillment based on an accumulated set of accomplishments, but we want to measure our fulfillment based on the number of people we have touched, on the number of people we've been able to influence and impact. Because it's not what we necessarily do, it's what others do as a result of what we do. See, that's the joy. That's why we speak. That's why we write books. Why? It's a part of the leaving of the legacy. It's a part of the leaving a part of us so that others can take that, accumulate it, and build upon it and do better than us. See, one of the greatest testimonies you could ever have is if somebody uses your name in their testimony. If somebody takes your material and teaches it to others. What an honor that can be. So as we then pursue, our purpose, okay, let's remember, okay, we want to design a life, we want to design our life with purpose, not pleasure, okay? We want to build it on the values of people, okay? Build it on values and people, realizing that it's not about me, that all the talent, skills, gifts, and abilities that I have, it's not for me. All those things that I have, that's not for me. It's not for my image. It's not to make me look good. It's my tools. It's what I've been given so that I can make a bigger difference for other people. And realizing that who I am is more important than that. Who I am is going to determine what I do. And so the joy about this then is we fit all of that. We take what we do and who we are, and we insert it into the meaning of life, which we can finally determine by asking, who is God? Who am I? What am I here for? Right? And where am I going? And let's then follow the illustration of the ant. Let's be relentless in our pursuit of our purpose. Let's be disciplined. And let's not let obstacles or distractions get in our way. Thanks.